These aren't the only 5 by any means, right? Happy 5 Fact Friday. 5 Fact Friday. I'm Charlie Lambden, and it is 5 Fact Friday. Guilty as charged. I was getting my tea ready. Hi, Jacek D. Hi, Nikki. Happy Friday the 13th. And it really has been a bit of a Friday the 13th. It's been a rough day in some ways. It's quite late Fact Friday. I've been on the road all day and I've got a bit of a sore throat, so forgive me. And it's pretty much as chaotic as usual. It's going to be tonight. As well as the 5 or 6 facts that are in the link below, there's been so much more this week. I've actually got about 8 or 9 or 10 things, and there's almost no positive news as concerns housing market function, as in how healthy the housing market is. But for those of you who don't have time to listen to my usual ramble, the headlines are: unemployment jumped at the largest single monthly amount since the global financial crisis of 2008. In 1 month, there was an increase of 109,000 taken off payroll. So payroll numbers went down 109,000, plus an extra 20,000 were revised down on April's. Okay, so April and May together, that's an additional 129,000 jobs lost. This is terrible news. Fact number 2, 1/3 of Brits still want to own a buy-to-let. They need their head examined, but it's an interesting fact to that. That was reported on This Is Money this week. Fact number 3, the Halifax reported its house price index this week and went, house prices dip month on month. Just a week after Nationwide said that they rose month on month, and both of their annual readouts also differ. We'll cover that. Next fact, lenders beg government to be allowed to indebt people for longer. So this is lenders asking the government to lift the limit on how many people they're allowed to lend more than 4.5 times income. There's a story that came out the day before the spending review announcements saying that social housing targets face cuts because of Rachel Reeves. Then the next day she announced her 39 billion for social house building over the next 10 years, but the Financial Times reported that actually that's smoke and mirrors, and there is in fact a reduction in that budget, and the way it was presented was a bit of spin. Who else do we have here? Hi guys, Carlos, Dan Seddon, hi there, Timo293, who's Alexandra, hi there, Naida, and Billy Ray Valentine, hi there. Billy Ray Valentine, I'm about to use a swear word, so if you've got children listening, stop, because my favorite quote from the film Trading Places is Billy Ray Valentine when he walks into the bar and someone calls him a mother sucker, and he goes, motherfucker? Moi? Hello, Billy Ray Valentine. And if you haven't seen Trading Places, go and watch that film. It's kind of a Christmas film, but not really. It's an amazing film. Good evening, Stephen. Let's get into this. And I am going to just switch this around a little bit and start. I'm not going to. There's homelessness data out this week, but I'm not going into that. Let's start with. Let me just get this up on screen for you. Just start with the headlines and unemployment. And all of this is basically helping everyone understand what the macro or big picture or whole of market dynamics are. At a local and regional level and at different levels of the market, there are different market forces. This is all overview for the whole country market in terms of which way is it tilting, okay? Because house prices and transaction volumes are driven as much, if not more, by wages and employment than anything else, this really tragic employment information is a very negative read, both on transactions, so people's confidence to buy at all. As people get less and less confident about how secure their job is, that affects people's confidence to buy. And it affects how many people can buy a house, and it affects lending as well, obviously, because as in these figures, and I haven't got the details, wage growth slowed further too. There's actually been an overwhelming amount of news this week. It's been very difficult to keep up with it. So that's fact number one, right? Is the payroll employees were down, and that's 274,000 fewer than a year ago. That is a staggering number. And of that 274,000, 109,000 of that drop was just last month in May. And you've got to remember that this is not a surprise. It's a shock, but it's not a surprise, because when the government announced they were increasing the jobs tax, a lot of companies just said, well, that's very simple. We won't be able to afford to keep on as many staff, and we won't be able to afford to give the pay rises anymore. So this was entirely predictable. The other thing I wanted to point out, because it's never reported in the media, is that the ONS also reported that the April figure has been revised from a decrease of 33,000 reported a month ago to a decrease of 55,000. So it's almost always the case that the ONS's revisions of its own data are worse. So the first readout is always a bit optimistic and then revised down. That is consistently and certainly the case with house prices that we know they report. And then there was this shocking graph that Bloomberg put together from this data. And you look at that graph, and then there were people on X going, "Well, it's not that bad. I mean, there was already a decline. It was a trend. There's been a trend reducing in employment. It's nothing to do with this government." Just look at that graph, please. Look at that graph and have a word with yourselves. Anyone who thinks that this isn't, by any standards, very bad news. The single biggest month-on-month drop in payrolled employees. And then there are people go, oh, they're probably all going on to self-employed. That's what it is. Yeah, it's all right. They're probably all going to self-employed. And there's no data to support that whatsoever. And I just don't understand that point of view from people who see that graph and go, nah, it's not a problem. It's not that big a deal. It's absolutely fine. Look at that graph. Look at the trend on that graph. And then tell me you think that there's nothing wrong with the economy. The prosperity at the moment in this country is dying. And AI, or large language models, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, is obviously a very significant factor in all of this as well. But I just fail to see any cause for any optimism on the economy anywhere at the moment. And if I see it, if I can find it, I would cheer it. I really, really would. Okay, so that was that. Let's get on to the next point, which is a third of Britons want to own a buy-to-let, but is it still a good idea? And this is Ed Magnus in This Is Money, which is a part of the Daily Mail, I think, yeah. And that article, which I've linked to below, goes into the pros and cons of it, right? What I wanted to say about this was that given the fact that earnings prospects for especially for younger people, are looking less and less optimistic, less and less promising, less and less hopeful, and people looking ahead and going, how am I ever going to afford a house? And that's why there are people out there like James Gerard, who I had on the channel earlier in the week, saying it's kind of now or never if you want to buy somewhere. So buy somewhere. And he's saying you should buy a buy-to-let because, if you buy one well, then it can be a good investment. But the problem is that it's not that easy. It's not like, oh, anyone can just do it. You've got to know what you're doing. And if you don't, you can end up in real trouble. But to me, the fact that 1/3 of Britons want to own a buy-to-let is just people going, because there's no prospect of me earning enough to live and save for my retirement any other way. And apparently owning a buy-to-let is just easy money, right? Anyway, I was surprised to see that story. Don't need to spend too long on that. Okay, onwards. Next. Right. This one gives me the opportunity to have another little dig at the house at the total lack of any credibility in the house price indices. Now, often when I've criticized house price indices in the past, people go, but Charlie, it's a lender. But Charlie, it's the Halifax. But Charlie, it's Nationwide. How can you criticize them? I mean, they're Nationwide. They're a lender. They must be right. We're going to believe them. We're going to take it at face value. And just that's what's happening. If they say house prices are going up, then as far as I'm concerned, house prices are going up. Okay. So what do you lot who's saying that to me in the past say to this, right? Here's the Halifax going month on month. Prices fell 0.4%. And annually, the year-on-year growth has dropped from 3.2% down to 2.5%. So month-on-month prices fell. Year-on-year prices, the growth fell to 2.5%. When only a week earlier, for the same period, Nationwide house prices were up 0.5% month-on-month. And house price growth has increased marginally year-on-year. What do you say to that, guys? Do you see my point? It doesn't matter whether they're saying up or whether they're saying down. These are wholly unreliable indices at the moment. They're just wholly unreliable, and they are to be disregarded, whatever they say, in the context of you making a decision for your own move. Okay? They're literally for the same period. One's going up, up, the other one's going down, down. Thank you for finally revealing the fact that there is no credibility to these house price indices. And I'm not suggesting there's anything being deliberately or dishonestly done. I'm saying that they don't reveal their workings or their mechanism. We don't know the size of their data set. We don't know the sample size. We don't know the context. We don't know the geography of it. There are all of these things. And therefore, they're just to be taken with a very large ladle full of salt. All right. So that's that. Now, next one. So I did a full with Stig on Monday night. I did a full video on this about Nationwide and rivals demanding the right to increase mortgages for first-time buyers. If you didn't see it, then if you got my newsletter, there's a link to that video in my newsletter. If you don't get the weekly newsletter, then you can sign up to it on this URL at the bottom of the screen now, mhwc.co.uk/newsletter. In that newsletter, you will find a link to the video where I went into this in detail with Stiggy on Monday night this week. So if you missed that, go and check it out. He produces a lot of his graphs, very, very clever, helpful, useful, and insightful graphs on the effects of increasing loan multiples and increasing loan terms on budgets and prices. So go and check that out if you missed it. Alrighty. Who else have we got in here? Liam Jennings, hi there. Jamie Boy, 14, hi. Isildur. Where did that disappear to? Just looking at there it is. Yeah, it does. We'll come on to a couple of these questions. There's some good questions here. Yeah, exactly. Some good comments in here. If you're watching on X, by the way, you can live chat on X, and we tend to have larger viewers on X than we do on YouTube. It's about the same number of you watching on X as on YouTube, but all the comments seem to come from YouTube followers. If you're watching on X, you can comment in the live chat here, so pipe up if you want to say something. But let's get on to the next point. So this was the story that came out last Saturday. UK's housing crisis will deepen if Reeves make further cuts in spending review. UK social housing is facing a cliff edge because of lack of funds. All right, that was interesting. So what that was saying is, unless they change something, new social housing, and by the way, social housing is what we need, not just new houses, but social houses. Then she announced in her spending review £39 billion over the next 10 years. But then the FT put this story out. England's social housing funds less generous than the £39 billion settlement suggests. The analysis indicates that spending of about £3 billion a year until 2029, similar to money for the current financial year. And just this first paragraph here, England's affordable housing programme has been allocated less per year in new money for the rest of this parliament than its current annual budget, despite Rachel Reeves' boasts of a record £39 billion settlement. Okay, so again, a lot of skepticism because they have not been specific or precise about exactly where that money goes, how it's spent, who it goes to. Look at this. The biggest cash injection in the sector in 50 years is what she said, but the money is heavily backloaded, involving about £3 billion a year until 2029. And that's the Institute for Fiscal Studies and the FT saying that. They're saying that the Affordable Homes Programme already has as much as £3.3 billion to spend in the current financial year, according to government officials. All right, so it's not the big deal that she says it is. This government is all about smoke and mirrors and total guff. It's very frustrating. All right. Next, we also had the Royal Institute for Chartered Surveyors put out their monthly market survey. It didn't make any headlines because it came out, I think, on the same day as the spending review. And it's the same day as GDP. Oh, by the way, there's also GDP numbers that aren't in the list of facts, but I've got them to go into in a minute. Buyer demand and agreed sales still struggling for momentum. So this is basically saying that the market is struggling, never mind prices, but the market is struggling in terms of activity, and that's bad news for everybody. Let me also point out to you, so this is a conversation amongst agents that I saw on an estate agency news website today. Interesting fact there, the number of properties for sale in the UK is now at the highest for about 8 years and continuing to rise. That's unsold stock. But down in the comments under the story, Old Dog New Tricks says, interesting reading, down in the southeast, the market seems to be faltering. Very price sensitive, more stock versus last year, less buyers, and first-time buyers are nervous. Knife edge, I'd say, this market. This is agents talking to each other, okay? An anonymous coward says, that certainly tells us what I can see. Former estate agent gone to the dark side as a surveyor. I visited 5 agents to collect keys in the South Coast in the last 2 weeks, and I've been told exactly that. The market's on the knife edge. And someone else saying, Southeast London, I concur exactly, 35 years experience. So the market is stalling, it's faltering in activity terms. As sales are increasing, as unemployment is increasing, as job vacancies are decreasing, if you just extrapolate all of these trends, the chances of the market suffering and struggling, and then you add in the fact that just today, hostilities in the Middle East have kicked off between Israel and Iran. That's sent oil prices skyrocketing. The oil price jumped by 8 or 9% in one day. None of these things are positive for the housing market, for activity, for confidence, etc. All right. Let me just go back to this. I'll have a quick look at a couple of these graphs. So I recommend you go and have a look at this yourself, because the regional breakdowns and the variations in the regional breakdowns can be informative. They don't break it down by price, sadly. They don't break it down by price, in other words, by or property type. I mean, it's just it's like a binary survey. They ask each surveyor the question, more or less, up or down, busier or quieter, and they ask them on price, on stock levels, on deal numbers. And what I think is one of the most interesting trends here is this one. So this graph here in the bottom left-hand corner, ignoring that huge spike, which was COVID, since then, the national new inventor instructions, so the amount of property coming to the market, has been trending up for the last 4 years. and continues to do so. And also on Best Agent, my site, this is snapshot data. Hang on a second. From about a week ago. And two interesting things. The number of total homes on the market that are for sale, not under offer, jumped 4% in it was about a 2-week period. Whereas the number of homes for sale agreed only jumped just under 1%. So in other words, the market is leaning more and more towards being in buyers' favor. Now, if there are first-time buyers watching this going, where I live, everything that comes to the market flies off the shelf immediately. There are places where the competition for the most affordable property is strong, and therefore prices at the first-time buyer level aren't coming down in those areas. And there are areas where they are. I mean, there's North London where flat prices are going up, but house, detached, semi, and terraced house prices are all going down. So this is what I mean. In every different region, you've got different things happening to different property types at different levels of the market. This is, again, just more useless national average stuff. But the other thing that was notable from this, so bear in mind, right, this top line is the data on sale agreed. So 135,000 homes in England showing sale agreed. The median asking price for those is 300,000, and that has not changed all year. The average price changes, but not very much. It's been changing a little bit. Okay. Interesting to note the difference between the average and the median, okay, because the median is a much closer typical price to what's actually happening. And the average price is always the one quoted by other indices. But look here what's happened. This is the first time that the median asking price of unsold homes is the first time it's increased this year. It's been 340,000 all year. And then just last week, that median price has gone up from 340,000 to 343,000, so just under 1%. Doesn't mean anything big. It's just notable. That can be caused by 2 or 3 different factors. It could be caused by a proportionately larger number of properties for sale at the higher price levels, or equally, a proportionately lower number of properties for sale, unsold properties at the lower levels. Now, given the fact that first-time buyers are still buying in relatively undiminished numbers, but at the higher level, there's more stuff unsold, that could be a factor for causing this median asking price of unsold property to be ticking up. There are proportionately more for sale at a higher price and less for sale at a lower price. It doesn't mean, as some people think it does, that the asking prices for all of them have gone up. That's not what it means. Not what it means. What else did I want to show you? So have a look at the RICS for their regional variations. It's interesting. I also put this on X earlier this week. This graph here is national price expectations 3 months and 12 months out. And the dark line is 3 months out, and the light blue line, the dotted line, is what they think 12 months out. What I noticed was that when they first started this next 12 months expectations in 2010, it pretty closely tracked whatever the expectations were for 3 months out. And then when Help to Buy came in 2013, 2014, suddenly the 12-month expectations have consistently, for the last 10 or 11 years, been much higher than the 3 months. What that means is that the RACS surveyors answering this question have been consistently over-optimistic for 10 years. That's how I interpret that graph. And there are more graphs here. They are worth a look. More charts on sales. Take a look for yourself, right? Now, last but not least, I know, where is it? Where's I can't find it now. I had the GDP figures. There it is. Monthly GDP fell 0.3% in April. Now, for those of you who've been paying attention and watching me and watched them a month ago, last month they reported that there was 0.7% growth in Q1 of this year. Sasha Yanchin did a brilliant takedown of that and showed, using the ONS's own tables and graphs, that all of that 0.7% increase in GDP that was claimed was between front-loaded exports because of tariffs. So it was a one-off blip effect. That was a small part of it, but most of it was an inexplicably large seasonal adjustment on one item, without which that growth wouldn't have been there. So the economy is faltering, employment is faltering, and as I showed you here on the Best Agent tab, the ratio of for sale to sold has ticked up to 4 unsold homes for every one that's showing as under offer. So overall, this does not apply to everybody. There are exceptions all over the place where this won't be the case, but overall, the whole housing market as a whole is tilting more in favor of buyers and less in favor of sellers. And that is truer the higher up the value chain you go. The higher the pricing level, the truer it is that there's more for sale and fewer buyers. I was really encouraged to see not only Kirsty Allsop calling for a scrappage of stamp duty, but also Dominic Frisby calling for a scrappage of stamp duty. And he did a video on it today, which I posted on X. It's brilliant, explaining he has several first-hand anecdotes of friends who want to move but can't or won't because of stamp duty. And Merrin Somerset Webb from Bloomberg also retweeted Dominic's post on that, going, "Stamp duty is ruining lives." Now I'm getting some real support for the fix housing, fix everything shtick. I'm working on some T-shirts and baseball caps, by the way, for you guys if you want to get fix housing, fix everything stuff. I'm looking forward to having that. Okay, let's take a few questions and then I've got to go. Okay, just quickly, let me take some. So Isildur1 asks, does war in the Middle East affect house prices in the UK? Not directly, no, but indirectly it can. So if the economy is impacted by oil prices, if that kicks inflation back up and that puts interest rates up and bond yields go up and that makes mortgage rates go up, so mortgages are more expensive, then yes, that will affect houses and house prices. But don't worry about national house prices in the UK, because as I've said, house prices do different things at different levels. Oh, that reminds me, there's something else I wanted to show you. There's a tweet that I put up today. Was it today? Yeah, here it is. Hang on a second. So this is, a lot of you will have seen this if you follow me on X. And if you don't, you really should, because it's where I post the most and interact the most with you guys. So here is the post I put up, which is, so This Is Money again did a story of a couple who've admitted that they borrowed too much to buy their £1.2 million home. They bought it in 2022 with a 3-year fix. They're about to come to the end of their 3-year fix, and they're not going to be able to afford the mortgage. And they're not going to be able to sell it now, basically, because it almost certainly is going to be negative equity. And I made this point here. When I see stories like this of people who overpaid back in 2022, which is when I started warning that we'd seen the top of the market. When I see stories like this, and remember how I was mocked by so many agents and mortgage brokers for the warning the market had peaked, it's not vindicating, it's infuriating. Because I was attacked and mocked by some, not all, by some mortgage brokers and agents going, "You're such a doom monger, don't talk the market down, what are you talking about?" And what I was talking about was, it was very, very clear to me that the market had peaked mostly in most areas, especially the higher price, and that people were still buying like it was 2021. And in 2021, people were buying like they had unlimited money, and people were bidding up, there were bidding wars, and people were overpaying, crazy overpaying. And in 2022, I could see from best agent data and other data that the market had turned, but no one was admitting it. And anyone like me that stuck their head up and goes, I think the market's turned and prices are going to come down again. And there's a video from me in February 2022 saying, I think the market's just peaked, and this is why, and I think it could start to come down this year. I wanted to warn people not to keep overpaying because of this exact reason. And I just wonder how many people got sucked into that trap back in 2022 when I was trying to get people to ignore it. Next question. Jamie Boy 14 says, bought a house last year for 250 grand. Spent 30 grand doing driveway and garden. I'll be lucky now to get 250,000. Well, Jamie, it sounds like you're kind of acknowledging what's happened to prices where you are. Do you feel like you overpaid? If you could go back last year and redo it, would you have paid it again? Or would you have paid less? Or would you not have bought at all? Whereabouts in the country is that? Be good to know. And are you planning to sell it, or is this a forever home? I'd be interested to know. Because if you're happy there and you've done the driveway and the garden, it looks good, then happy days if you're in there and you can afford it. But it is another cautionary tale that a lot of people overpay in the heat and the excitement of buying a house. Neil Hamilton, referring to the ONS revising their April figures down. Yes, real April dropped 66% more than the estimate. It's laughable. I completely agree. Has some people pushing back saying, yes, but as a percentage of the overall workforce, it's only 0.2%. So it's 109,000 people who lost their jobs in 1 month. And there are people trivializing that. Unbelievable. Timo293 on YouTube says, how far back to the latest released HMRC sold property prices records go? HMRC, whilst it contains and it has in its possession sold property prices, HMRC doesn't publish them. Only the Land Registry publishes them, and it does so with a big delay. It takes the Land Registry roughly 15 months to finish publishing and processing final sold prices for each month that goes past. So for the most recent month that they announced, they've got another year or more before they actually have completed registering all the sales. But how far back do they go? They go back all the way. I mean, Land Registry data goes back 50 years or something. Do we have any other questions? Jamie Boy says, you were right, Charlie. I did listen, but had to move quickly. Cool. And yes, it's your forever home and in Mablethorpe. Cool. All right. So you would still buy it. That's great news. I'm glad you're still happy to be there. Winston Fahrenheit says, scrapping stamp duty will only mean sellers putting house prices up by the amount of stamp duty saved. Let me remind you something. The market doesn't care what a seller prices at. Say it after me and write it down 100 times. Go and sit in the corner and don't leave until you've written out 100 times. The market doesn't care what a seller wants. The market doesn't care what a seller wants. Keep on writing it. The market doesn't care what you think your house is worth. The market doesn't care how much you spent on the kitchen. The market doesn't care what the estate agent has valued it at. The market doesn't care about any of those things. None of those things inform buyers' offers. Buyers offer what they can afford. Okay? So now, having said that, stamp duty, first of all, doesn't affect first-time buyers below 300,000, which is the majority of first-time buyers. So the median first-time buyer price is 280 or something. Secondly, when there's a stamp duty holiday, yes, I agree, it does affect prices, as we saw during COVID. And what happened at the end of the holiday? Down they came. What's happening right now that they've ended the stamp duty temporary lifting of thresholds, ended on the 1st of April. And what's happened now? Oh, there's another page I haven't shared with you. I didn't even know that I found this by mistake. Look at this. This is a graph of legal activities and real estate activities on a fee or contract basis, and they both fell in April 2025 after growth in March 2025. So in other words, there's your cliff edge of legal and estate agency activities happening as a result of the end of the stamp duty thresholds being elevated. They're now back down to where they were. The stamp duty, the increase in stamp duty costs, combined with, at the same time, the increase in national insurance contributions for employers, combined at the same time with the increase in the minimum wage for employers, is like a perfect storm of things that are going to kill housing market activity, as we're seeing in the employment figures. And this is brand new. Didn't even know they measured that. Every day is a school day. So, but to answer your point, Winston, right? They don't, if it was a permanent scrappage, it was announced, right? We are scrapping stamp duty permanently on all first home transactions, not first time buyers, but so even if you're moving home, you're selling a home to move into another home, that's still your only home. So for only home transactions, no stamp duty. So no one is penalised for wanting to move on, move up, or move down, free up space. No one is penalised by stamp duty for that. If they permanently scrapped it, the only difference that it would make would be to the people's deposit budgets. It wouldn't make a difference to how much they can borrow, because the borrowing is based on their earnings. And yeah, Jamie Boy said the market really doesn't care. Fuck's sake, you're quite right. So I don't think scrapping stamp duty doesn't automatically put house prices up, again, because stamp duty varies depending on who the buyer is. Okay, so if there is stamp duty for people buying a second home, or for landlords buying an investment property, well, what does that say to the value of the house? See what I mean? There's not an automatic increase in house prices if there's a permanent reduction in stamp duty. Got some more questions coming in here. Carlos makes a very good point. Most of the EPC D-rated places I've seen need so much cash spent to get energy efficient, the prices just don't make sense. Yes, I agree with that. Valley says, good evening, Charlie. A question. Hello, Valley, a new name here. Would a first-time buyer have to pay stamp duty, or is it just on a new house? If you're a first-time buyer and the price of the property you're buying is below £300,000, you do not have to pay stamp duty, whether or not it's a new build. It's no difference whether it's new or not. If you are a first-time buyer and the price is above £300,000, you pay a reduced amount of stamp duty, I think. I'm not 100% sure on that. From memory, you pay a reduced amount. Okay, so it depends on the budget. Carlos says, given how things are going, do you expect more artificial stimulus, government stimulus in the short, medium term? Given how things are going for the government, I don't think they can afford to stimulate anything. So it's entirely possible that they will allow lenders to lend bigger multiples to people. That would be a stimulating factor for prices to a limited degree. I don't see them. I mean, some people think there's going to be a new Help to Buy, but I actually think there'd be too much pushback on that now, because I think enough people now realize that the previous Help to Buy was what caused affordability to become so bad. In fact, Housing Stig's graph proves that. It just proves it. Yeah, Patricia's saying stamp duty is a tax. It doesn't move the price up or down. I agree with that. Was there one other question here? Vernon, your question's incomplete here. But it says, okay, no, I see the rest of it now. Search packs should be ordered ASAP. Correct. But how do you mitigate costs from more expensive costs? Mortgage survey, level 3 survey, especially if the chain is incomplete. What are the key seller milestones to mitigate fall through risk? These are good questions. And the fall throughs caused by sellers are especially frustrating. And it happens because, for example, sellers accept your offer and they start going with the process, and then they can't find somewhere else to live. They can't afford to find somewhere else to live, or for whatever other reason, they just change their mind and decide to put out a transaction. Now, what I recommend, and if you've used my first time buyer offer email template or the cash buyer offer email template, there's a paragraph in there that suggests on an informal basis that the buyer and the seller agree that if either one withdraws for reasons other than transaction related reasons, so if it's not because of a survey or something else, but if someone just changes their mind and backs out, would they agree to pay half of the other party's wasted costs? Right? So if I'm the buyer and I'm buying your house, you're the seller, I'm offering, and I say, look, I don't want to pay for all of my surveys and my property search pack and get close to exchange for you to turn around and go, actually, we're not selling, and then I'm left high and dry all those costs. So would you agree to pay half of it? I'll pay half, right? So I'll still pay half of my wasted costs if you pull out, but would you agree to pay half? And if a seller says no to that, this is why I suggest asking the question, because it's quite a good early warning that they're on the fence about selling, or they're not confident about finding someone to move out to. And to me, that would be a bit of a warning flag that the seller's not as committed to the transaction as they might be. Another thing is, if a seller's on the market and you make an offer and they accept it, but they haven't got a solicitor lined up or anything, that's sloppy on the part of the seller and on the agent. And again, that's okay. Have they even thought this through? But to answer your question, Vernon, there's very little you can do to mitigate the risk once you've embarked on those costs. Understanding the seller's reasons for moving is a key one. Like, are they definitely going to sell or not? Looking at the speed with which they're moving. Is the seller dragging their heels, or are they being quite proactive? If they're being quite proactive and getting their solicitor to send you the memorandum of sale straight away and all that kind of stuff, that's a good sign. But are they dragging their heels? Is their conveyancer being slow to respond to questions from your conveyancer? These are all slight warning signs. So it's a judgment call. Other than asking them to agree to pay half any wasted costs, there's not much more you can do. There are people who offer committed contracts where it's much more complicated, and then you as a buyer put a much larger amount in, and it's a committed sale contractually. Those tend to be, I mean, some people swear by them, but they tend to be more complicated. What, says Mike Denton? Rachel can't be stimulated? I suspect not. Yeah, Egbon Yoruba says oil price spiking, inflation going back up. It's difficult to know how much it's going to affect inflation and how long. It depends whether this kicks off. It depends whether this turns into a big major conflict or not, or whether it's just a flash in the pan and then comes back down again. Yeah, guys, I'm going to call it a day. I'm going to thank you very much for watching. I'm going to wish you a happy weekend. I'm going to say to you, if you haven't, if you want to make sure that you get, so those of you who are subscribed to this newsletter got these 5 facts this morning at 8 o'clock. So if you want to be the first one to get the 5 facts by email with a few other bits and bobs in there as well from the week, including links to videos you might have missed, that kind of stuff, then my newsletter's there. MHWC, which is for moving home with Charlie.co.uk/newsletter. On that happy note, just remember, sellers, the market doesn't care. Say it to yourself before you go to bed tonight. The market doesn't care what I want for my house. The market doesn't care what I want for my house. Market doesn't care. I mean, I'm being serious. You need, if you want to move, you can't move without having offers on your house at the very least. And if you stick your head in the sand about what you think the value of your house is, you won't get any offers. You don't have to accept any offers, but if you want to find out what the market for your house is, stop thinking that the market cares what you think your house is worth. It's cold, hard fact, cold, hard truth. Don't worry about what you think or what your agent thinks. The market will tell you how much your house is worth, and you'll get more for it the more buyers you come through the door. And the more buyers that come through the door, because of the better your launch price. You can go too low with the launch price, but 99% of you go too high with your launch price. Put the buyers off, buyers don't come through the door, you don't find out what the market for your house is. And that's the worst thing, right? If your house is sitting on the market and you've had a trickle of viewings and no offers, you don't know what the market for your house is. And everyone's time is being wasted. You're sitting there, fingers crossed, hoping that just need that one person who's going to fall in love with it and come and pay asking price. This almost never happens in a market like we've got now. Right? So if you're a seller, don't overprice. Don't overprice. Don't over. I had a message from an agent today who has adopted this approach with his clients. Saying, like, I can only sell your house if you let me decide what the launch price is. That will let us get multiple offers, and then we'll see what the market for your house is. And he was talking to a couple, and he said to the couple, "Don't answer me now. I'm going to go away. I'll call you back tomorrow. Talk to each other and ask yourselves if you both agree that you trust me and will let me launch your house at whatever price I like. Because only then, if you agree to that, do I understand that you've bought into the process, which is you understand that the market will determine the price for your house. Whatever the asking price is, the market price will be what the market price is. And you will discover that by getting competing buyers. So that's sellers. Just don't overprice. And come to the market prepared, especially with all this extra competition if you're a seller. Have your sale pack ready. Have your conveyancer appointed. Have yourself ready to go. And buyers, always buy a home if you found one you want to live in and you can afford it, but don't overpay. Don't overextend yourself like those guys earlier in the show. All right. Thank you for watching. Thank you for everyone watching on all the different platforms you're watching on. You're watching on X, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and also those of you listening on audio podcasts, on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you listen to Moving Home with Charlie, thank you. All the links for all my videos are always in the show notes of the podcast. And if you're new here, and there are a lot of you who are new, and you don't have time to watch my long rambling videos, you can listen to my long rambling rambles on audio podcasts instead. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend. See you next week. Bye-bye.